All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. We're taking on cancer today. And we've got this awesome Healthline article as our guide. Like, seriously, there's some wild stuff in here. I think we all hear about cancer all the time, but, you know, do we really get it?
You're so right. Most people know a little bit, but I mean, cancer's complicated, right? It can be like really overwhelming to try and wrap your head around. So, like, are you getting ready for a meeting? Just trying to, stay on top of things, or
Right.
just kind of curious? Whatever it is, we're going to break it down for you nice and clear, make it stick.
Love it. So, right off the bat, this stat just blew my mind. Almost a third of cancer deaths could be totally prevented. That's a huge number. We're talking about like the stuff we do, our habits, the choices we make. It's kind of empowering to think about, but also a little scary, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, it really shows how much power we have over our health. But before we get too far ahead, let's go back to the basics. What exactly is cancer, anyway?
Yeah, good point. Let's break it down. So it's not just one disease, right?
Right. It's more like a bunch of different diseases all grouped together where cells in your body, they kind of go off the rails. Instead of growing and dividing normally, they just start multiplying like crazy, breaking all the rules.
So like a cellular rebellion.
Exactly. And these rebel cells, they can form tumors, invade tissues near them, and even spread to other parts of your body. We call that metastasis.
Okay, now I've heard these cellular shenanigans are caused by something called DNA mutations. Is that right?
You got it. Think of DNA like the instruction manual for your cells. It tells them what to do, and mutations are like typos in that manual. They mess everything up.
Interesting. And these mutations, you said, they can either be inherited, passed down from your parents, or acquired, like during your life. But what actually causes those acquired mutations?
Now, that's where things get really interesting. See, lots of these mutations are triggered by things in the environment around us. The article calls them carcinogens, and there are like three main types.
Okay, hit me with Carcinogen Crash Course 101. What's category number one?
First up, we've got physical carcinogens. Things like radiation and UV rays from the sun, they can actually damage DNA directly. It's kind of like, imagine a meteor shower, but on a tiny scale, hitting your cells.
Ouch. Okay, that's definitely a visual I won't forget. What about category number two?
Next, we got chemical carcinogens. This is a big one. It includes things like cigarette smoke, asbestos, alcohol, air pollution, even stuff like contaminated food or water. These things, they can get into your cells and mess with your DNA, leading to, well, those typos we talked about.
Wow, it's wild how many everyday things can affect our cells like that. Okay, on to category number three. What are the final suspects in our cellular crime scene?
Last but not least, we've got biological carcinogens. These guys are sneaky. We're talking about certain viruses, bacteria, even some parasites. They can infect your cells and basically throw a wrench in the works.
So, like a microscopic invasion. All right, so we've got these carcinogens causing chaos in our DNA, which can potentially lead to cancer. But wait a minute, the article said a huge chunk of cancer deaths could be prevented. If these carcinogens are everywhere, how is that even possible?
Well, that's where, our choices come in. A lot of the things that increase our exposure to these carcinogens are things we have control over.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Tobacco use, drinking too much alcohol, eating lots of processed meats and sugary drinks. Those are all choices we make.
So it's not just about avoiding the occasional bad thing, but making like consistent choices that really lower our overall exposure. I'm starting to get why those preventable deaths really add up.
You got it. It's like building up your defenses against these cellular invaders. But, it's not all about carcinogens. There are other things that can increase our risk, things that, well, we can't really control. Well, age is a big one. Like, you hear about cancer more and more as people get older. That's because our risk does tend to go up with age. But here's the thing. That risk actually peaks, like between 70 and 80. And then, get this, it starts to go down.
Really? Cancer risk goes down after a certain age. That's surprising.
Yeah. There are a couple of theories about why that might happen. Some think it's because our cells just, they get worse at repairing DNA damage as we get older, so we end up with more mutations. But then something changes, and our cells maybe become less likely to go rogue and become cancerous.
So, like, our bodies have some kind of built-in mechanism that eventually puts the brakes on all the cellular chaos.
That's one idea. Another thought is that it's just like the more time you've lived, the more exposure you've had to things that can damage your DNA. But then at some point, that rate of exposure slows down.
Makes sense. So it's this whole mix of our internal biology and the stuff we encounter in the world, right?
Exactly. And, speaking of different types of cancer, it's important to know they're categorized based on where they start and the type of cell they involve.
Oh, right. So even if a cancer spreads to other parts of the body, it's still defined by its origin. That's good to know. But with all the different cells in our bodies, I imagine there are, like, tons of different types of cancer, right?
You're right, there are. To make things a bit easier, doctors use some broader terms to group cancers together, based on what they look like and how they behave.
Okay, I'm all ears. Lay those categories on me.
Well, one of the big ones is called carcinoma. Big word, but basically it covers cancers that start in your skin or the tissues that line your organs. Your skin, your lungs, your digestive system, carcinoma can show up in a lot of places.
So it's kind of like the all-star team of cancers, affecting all sorts of organs and tissues.
That's a great way to put it. Now, another one you'll hear a lot is sarcoma. This guy is all about the connective tissues in your body, things like your bones, muscles, cartilage, blood vessels.
Ah, so if carcinoma is the lining, sarcoma is the support structure.
Exactly. And then we have leukemia. This one affects the bone marrow, which is like the factory that makes all your blood cells.
So leukemia messes with your blood supply, which impacts, well, pretty much everything, right? Your immune system, your ability to clot.
You got it. And then there's lymphoma and myeloma, which are cancers that attack the immune system itself. They mess with your body's ability to fight off infections and other diseases.
Wow. So many different types, each with its own challenges. But before we get into treatment, the article stressed early detection. Why is that so important?
Early detection can really change the game. Catching cancer early, before it's spread too much, can really increase the chances of successful treatment. It's like spotting a tiny crack in a bridge before it collapses.
I like that. And that's where cancer screenings come in, right? They're like those routine checkups to catch problems before they get too big.
Exactly. So, like, for cervical and prostate cancer, screenings are often part of a regular checkup. And for folks with specific risk factors, like a family history of lung cancer or, a history of smoking, they might need regular lung cancer screenings.
Makes sense. And, skin cancer is a big one, especially with all the sunshine we get. What about those screenings?
Yep, seeing a dermatologist for regular skin checks is crucial, especially if you have any concerns or are at higher risk. They can spot those weird moles or growths early when treatment is easiest.
And what about colorectal cancer? I remember hearing there are screenings for that starting at a certain age.
Yeah, the American Cancer Society recommends people start getting screened for colorectal cancer at age 45. Colonoscopy is the gold standard, but you can also get at-home tests that can catch some forms of it.
Oh, so there are options for people who, might not want a colonoscopy. And of course, we got to talk about breast cancer. What's the latest on mammograms?
Mammograms are still the best tool we have. They're generally recommended for women starting at age 25, though you can choose to start at 40. And for those with a higher risk, it might be even earlier. It's all about, personalized healthcare, figuring out what's best for each person.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
But the takeaway is clear. Regular checkups and screenings are essential. Early detection really can be life-saving.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so to really get why early detection matters, let's zoom in and see how cancer actually grows and spreads in the body.
All right, back to the cellular level. Remind me how this whole abnormal cell division thing works. What's happening in the DNA that makes cells go rogue?
Well, usually our cells are super organized. They grow, they divide, they die when they're supposed to. Everything follows this precise schedule laid out by their DNA. Think of it like like a beautifully choreographed ballet.
I love that analogy.
Mhm.
So what happens when cancer crashes the party?
It's like a dancer who trips and messes up the whole routine. Cancer boils down to errors, those mutations in the DNA. Remember, the DNA is like the instruction manual. The mutations are typos.
So instead of gracefully bowing out when their time is up, these mutated cells decide to stick around and keep dividing.
Exactly. And not just that, they might start creating new cells even when they're not needed, adding to the chaos.
Like a cellular rave that's gotten totally out of control. And this uncontrolled division eventually forms those tumors, right?
You got it. Now, not all tumors are created equal. Some are what we call benign. That means they're not cancerous and they don't spread.
So like a small bump in the road, not a major detour.
Exactly. But even benign tumors can be a problem if they get too big and push on nearby organs or tissues.
So not malignant, but still troublemakers. What about those malignant tumors?
Those are the ones we really got to watch out for. Those are cancerous, and they can invade surrounding tissues. They're like a tiny army on the move.
And that's where things get serious, because some of those cells can break off and travel to other parts of the body.
Yep. That's metastasis. Those rogue cells can travel through your bloodstream or your lymphatic system, spreading to other organs. It's like they're planting seeds in the wind, creating new tumors far away. And once cancer metastasizes, it becomes much harder to treat.
That's why catching it early is so important. We got to stop those rebel cells before they can spread and set up shop elsewhere.
Exactly. All right, so we've covered the basics of what cancer is and how it acts. Now let's talk about the tools doctors use to fight it. Ready to explore cancer treatments.
I'm ready. This is where things start to get hopeful. Let's hear about the weapons we have in this battle.
Well, there are a lot of different ways to treat cancer, and the best approach really depends on the type of cancer, how far it's spread, the patient's health, and, their own preferences. But generally, we can group treatments into three categories.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the first category?
First, we have localized treatment. That means targeting the specific area where the cancer is. It's like sending in a precision strike team.
So we're trying to hit the tumor directly, minimizing damage to healthy tissues around it.
You got it. The classic examples are surgery and radiation therapy.
Okay, makes sense. What about the second category?
Second, we have systemic treatment. That means using medications that travel throughout the whole body to attack cancer cells wherever they are. It's like, imagine a special forces unit hunting down those rogue cells.
I love that analogy. So this is more of a widespread attack.
Exactly. Chemotherapy, targeted therapy, immunotherapy all fall under systemic treatment.
Interesting. And what about that third category?
That would be palliative treatment. This is focused on relieving symptoms and improving quality of life for people with cancer. It might be used along with other treatments or on its own, depending on the person's needs and goals.
So it's not always about curing the cancer, but about making the person more comfortable.
Exactly. It's a really important part of cancer care. Now let's dive into some of the specific treatments mentioned in the article.
Okay, let's start with surgery. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Cut it out and you're good.
Well, it's not always that simple. The surgery depends a lot on the type of cancer and where it is. Sometimes it's about taking out the whole tumor. Other times it's about removing as much as possible to reduce its size and impact.
So not always a complete removal, but a strategic approach to minimize the cancer.
Exactly. And often surgery is combined with other treatments like chemo or radiation to get rid of all the cancer cells.
Makes sense. Now, what about chemotherapy? Most people have heard of chemo, but how does it actually work?
Chemo uses strong drugs to kill cells that are dividing quickly, which, includes cancer cells. The downside is that chemo doesn't really differentiate, so it can also harm healthy cells that divide quickly, like cells in your hair follicles, bone marrow, and digestive system.
So that's why people on chemo often experience side effects like hair loss, nausea, and fatigue.
Exactly. It's like fighting a war, but unfortunately some innocent bystanders get caught in the crossfire.
It's a necessary evil, I suppose. But, I've heard chemo has become more targeted over time, so maybe those side effects aren't as bad now.
You're right. Scientists are always working on ways to make chemo drugs more precise and cause less harm to healthy cells. Okay, now let's talk about another common treatment, radiation therapy. This one also aims to destroy cancer cells, but instead of drugs, it uses high-energy beams.
So we're basically zapping those cancer cells with, like, a laser beam.
That's a great way to picture it. There are two main types, brachytherapy and external beam radiation.
Okay, what's the difference between those two?
Brachytherapy involves putting a radioactive source right inside the body near the tumor. It's like, imagine sending in a tiny radioactive spy to disrupt the cancer from within.
Clever. And external beam radiation.
External beam radiation, well, that one delivers radiation from a machine outside the body. Like launching a missile strike on the cancer.
So it's an external attack, focusing those beams on the cancer's location. It seems like both approaches could be useful depending on the cancer.
You got it. Each treatment has its own pros and cons, and doctors carefully weigh everything before making a recommendation.
This is fascinating. Now, I've also heard of stem cell transplants. It sounds pretty intense, almost like resetting the body's blood-making system.
That's a good way to put it. Stem cell transplants or bone marrow transplants are a powerful option, especially for blood cancers like leukemia.
Okay, how does that work?
Basically, we replace damaged bone marrow, which, remember, is where all our blood cells are made, with healthy stem cells. These stem cells can come from the patient themselves or from a donor.
So we're giving the body a fresh start with healthy blood-making cells.
Exactly. And this lets doctors use higher doses of chemo to kill the cancer cells without worrying about permanently damaging the patient's bone marrow. It's a powerful treatment, but of course it comes with its own risks.
Of course, every treatment has its pluses and minuses. Now, I'm super curious about immunotherapy. It seems like everyone's talking about it. Can you explain how this revolutionary approach actually works?
Sure, immunotherapy is all about harnessing the power of the body's own immune system to fight the cancer.
So instead of attacking the cancer directly, we're helping our bodies do the job.
Exactly. Our immune system is supposed to recognize and destroy invaders, like viruses and bacteria, but sometimes it doesn't see cancer cells as a threat. It's like they're wearing invisibility cloaks.
So immunotherapy is like giving our immune systems X-ray vision to see those cancer cells.
That's a great way to put it. These immunotherapy drugs essentially remove the cancer cell's cloak. Then our immune system can attack them.
Wow, that's incredible. So we're basically training our bodies to fight their own cancer.
Exactly. And it's been really successful for certain cancers. It's still a relatively new approach, but it's incredibly promising.
I can see why people are so excited about it. Now, the article also mentioned hormone therapy. How does that work?
Hormone therapy is a smart strategy used for cancers that rely on hormones to grow. It's like cutting off the enemy's supply line.
So if some cancers need specific hormones to grow, we can stop that by blocking those hormones.
Exactly. Hormone therapy is commonly used for breast and prostate cancer, which we know are sensitive to hormones. By changing those hormone levels, doctors can slow down or even stop the cancer's growth.
So we're basically taking away their fuel. I'm loving all these analogies. Speaking of targeted approaches, what about targeted drug therapy?
Targeted drug therapy is all about precision. It uses drugs that interfere with specific molecules that cancer cells need to survive and grow. It's like using a laser-guided missile to hit the cancer where it hurts.
So instead of going after all fast-dividing cells like chemo does, we're zeroing in on the specific molecules that make the cancer tick. But how do doctors know what to target?
Genetic testing is playing a bigger and bigger role in cancer treatment. By analyzing a tumor's genes, doctors can find specific mutations that are driving the cancer. Then they can pick drugs to interfere with those specific pathways.
So it's like creating a custom treatment based on the unique blueprint of each person's cancer.
That's the idea. It's a really exciting time to be in cancer research. We're getting so much better at understanding and targeting cancer at the molecular level. Now, another important piece of the puzzle is clinical trials.
Right. Clinical trials are super important for advancing treatments. How do those work?
Clinical trials are basically research studies that look into new ways to treat cancer. They might involve testing new drugs, trying different combinations of existing treatments, or even looking into new surgical techniques.
So they're like testing grounds for the next generation of cancer treatments.
Exactly. And participating in a trial can give patients access to cutting-edge treatments that aren't available to the public yet. It's a way to be directly involved in the fight against cancer.
That's amazing. Now, the article also mentioned alternative medicine. What role does that play?
Alternative medicine, like things like acupuncture, yoga, massage, can be really helpful for supporting people with cancer.
So it's not about replacing conventional treatments, but about adding an extra layer of support.
Exactly. Alternative therapies can help manage the side effects of treatment, like nausea and fatigue. They can also be really helpful for mental and emotional well-being, during a tough time.
It's about treating the whole person, not just the disease.
You got it. Okay, before we wrap up our treatment talk, we need to talk about prognosis. What affects the outlook for someone diagnosed with cancer?
That's a big question, and I bet the answer is complex. It's not like there's a simple formula, right?
You're right, there isn't. The prognosis, the likely course of the disease depends on a lot of things. The type of cancer is a big one. Some are naturally more aggressive than others. Then there's the stage at diagnosis. Remember how we said early detection is so important? Well, the earlier the cancer is caught, the better the chances are.
So a stage 1 cancer, which is localized, has a much better prognosis than stage 4, which is spread.
Exactly. And even the location of the cancer matters. Some parts of the body are just harder to treat.
So lots of factors at play.
Definitely. And of course, a person's overall health plays a role too. A younger, healthier person might be able to handle treatment better than someone who is older or has other health problems.
This really emphasizes the need for personalized medicine, right? Adapting treatment to each individual. All right, we've covered a lot. It can be overwhelming, but let's talk about prevention. What can we do to reduce our risk in the first place?
That's where we really take control. The good news is that a lot of the risk factors are things we can change. Think of it as like taking steps to protect yourselves from going rogue.
I like that. Okay, what are some concrete steps we can take?
If you smoke, quitting is the single best thing you can do for your health. And if you don't smoke, it's just as important to avoid secondhand smoke. Smoking is linked to so many different types of cancer, so quitting is a huge win.
Absolutely. It's like giving your body a fresh start.
You got it. Now, diet is also super important. We've touched on this, but it bears repeating. What we eat really does matter. Cutting back on processed meats is a great first step. Seriously, they're like little cancer bombs.
Okay, that's a visual I can't unsee. I'm definitely cutting back on those. But what should we be eating more of? What are the cancer-fighting superheroes in the food world?
A diet with lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. Giving your body all the nutrients it needs to fight disease.
So it's not about deprivation, but about abundance. It's about filling up on the good stuff.
Exactly. And don't forget about alcohol. Moderation is key here. Drinking too much is linked to several types of cancer.
So it's not about never having a drink, but about being mindful.
Exactly. Another thing is keeping a healthy weight. Obesity increases your risk for some cancers, so staying within a healthy range is really important.
It's all connected, right? Healthy food, regular exercise, maintaining a healthy weight.
Absolutely. Speaking of exercise, being physically active is also really important. Try to get at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise per week.
So it's not just about going to the gym, but about moving more in general, taking the stairs, walking more, stuff like that.
You got it. And of course, protect your skin from the sun.
Right. Wearing hats, sunglasses, sunscreen.
All crucial for reducing your risk of skin cancer, which is super common.
And there are some vaccines that can protect against cancer-causing viruses, right?
Right. The hepatitis B vaccine can protect against hepatitis B, which can lead to liver cancer. And the HPV vaccine protects against HPV, which is linked to several cancers, including cervical cancer.
So we're giving our immune systems a head start.
Yep. And of course, we can't overemphasize the importance of regular checkups and screenings. Catching cancer early is key, and those screenings can help.
So it's a two-pronged approach. We lower our risk and we stay vigilant with checkups and screenings.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive and informed. Remember, knowledge is power. Understanding cancer gives us the power to make choices that protect our health.
That's so empowering.
It is. As we keep exploring this topic, we'll uncover even more fascinating things about cancer, its causes, treatments, and all the amazing advances in research. It
Yeah.
really is amazing how much control we have, when it comes to our health.
I know, right? It's like, we've got this whole toolkit, but we just got to figure out how to use it. But one thing I always wonder about with cancer is genetics. Like, how much do our genes actually play into our risk of getting it?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's something researchers are still trying to figure out. We know for sure that certain gene mutations, changes in your genes can be inherited. That means passed down through families. And those mutations can increase your risk of certain cancers. But it's really important to remember that genetics isn't the whole story. It's not like if you have a certain gene, boom, you're going to get cancer. It doesn't work like that.
This is not a guaranteed thing.
Nope, not at all. Most of the time, cancer is this complex interaction between your genes and your environment. It's like you might have a gene that makes you more likely to develop a certain cancer, but it often takes something in your environment to actually trigger it, like those carcinogens we were talking about.
So, like, our genes might load the gun, but something in the environment pulls the trigger.
That's a perfect analogy. And that's why it's so important to think about both, what you might have inherited and the things you can control in your environment.
This makes me think about those families where it seems like, I don't know, almost everyone gets cancer. If it's not a sure thing, like you said, what's going on there?
Well, usually it's a combo of shared genes and shared environments. Think about it. Family members often inherit similar genes. And, they also tend to share lifestyle habits. Maybe they live in similar environments. So they could be exposed to the same kinds of carcinogens.
So it's like this double whammy. The genes increase your risk, and then the environment pushes you over the edge.
Exactly. And that's why making those healthy choices is so important. Even if you have a family history of cancer, you can really lower your risk by taking care of yourself.
That's good to know. It's like you can change the ending of the story, even if the beginning isn't ideal. Now, another thing that people often worry about with cancer is recurrence. Like it coming back after treatment, it's got to be scary.
It's a really valid concern. A lot of cancer survivors and their families think about it. That possibility can be tough to deal with.
So what are the chances of it happening? Is it like a ticking time bomb?
I wish it was that simple, but it's not. The chances of cancer coming back really depend on a lot of things. the type of cancer, how advanced it was when it was diagnosed, how well the initial treatment worked, the person's overall health.
So it's really individualized.
Totally. Every case is different. It's so important to talk to your doctor, really have open conversations. They can give you advice and support based on your specific situation. They can also talk to you about ways to lower your risk of recurrence, maybe lifestyle changes, follow-up appointments, things like that.
So it's not just about treating the cancer, but about having a plan for the long term, staying healthy, and keeping an eye on things.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really important part of cancer that we haven't really talked about yet, the emotional side of things. I mean, cancer isn't just a physical battle, it's like a whole emotional roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine the fear and anxiety that come with a diagnosis like that. It's got to be overwhelming, not just for the person with cancer, but for their family and friends too.
It really is. And all those feelings are totally normal. You're not alone in feeling them. And, it's so important to remember that you don't have to go through this alone. There are people who can help.
So where can people turn for support during such a tough time? Are there resources out there?
Definitely. There are so many great organizations and resources specifically for people affected by cancer. They've got support groups, counseling services, online communities, even specialized cancer centers. They offer a safe space, a compassionate environment to connect with others who understand what you're going through.
It's like finding a community of people who really get it.
Yeah, exactly. Sharing your story with others who have been there can be so healing. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to feel. Everyone copes with cancer differently, and it's important to be true to your own experience.
I love that, honoring your own emotional journey. It's so personal.
Exactly. And if you're really struggling, don't be afraid to reach out to a professional, like a therapist or counselor who specializes in cancer support. They can give you tools to manage anxiety and stress and help you navigate all the ups and downs.
It's so important to remember that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It takes courage to admit you need support, and there are so many incredible people out there ready to help.
I couldn't agree more. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. We've explored so much about cancer, the causes, the types, the treatments, the emotional impact. But the conversation doesn't stop here. Cancer research is always moving forward. New discoveries are being made all the time.
It's like we're always adding new chapters to the story.
Exactly. And I encourage you to stay curious, keep learning, stay engaged in this conversation. With every new breakthrough, we get closer to a future where cancer isn't this scary, life-ending disease, but something that we can manage.
That's a really hopeful thought. Speaking of hope, what are some of the advancements in cancer treatment or prevention that you're most excited about? What makes you hopeful for the future?
Oh, that's a great question. There's so much happening right now, it's tough to choose. But I think one thing that really fascinates me is the potential of personalized medicine. We're moving away from this one-size-fits-all approach and toward treatments that are designed specifically for each person's cancer.
So like we were talking about earlier, tailoring treatments to the specific blueprint of the cancer.
Exactly. And that's leading to treatments that are more effective and have fewer side effects. As we learn more and more about the human genome, the possibilities are pretty incredible. We're entering this whole new era of cancer care, where treatment is as unique as the person receiving it.
That's amazing. And, beyond personalized medicine, I'm also super interested in the progress being made in immunotherapy.
Mm,
It seems like we're just beginning to tap into the potential of that approach, using our own bodies to fight the cancer.
right. It's like giving our immune systems the tools they need to do what they're supposed to do. And as research continues, I have no doubt we'll see even more breakthroughs, things that lead to longer lasting responses to cancer.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm honestly feeling really optimistic about the future of cancer treatment and prevention.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we've unpacked from just one article.
I know. And that's the power of knowledge, right? Understanding cancer helps us prevent it, catch it early, and fight it more effectively. And this is just the start of your journey. There's always more to learn, more to discover, and more to be hopeful about.
It's amazing, isn't it? Just how much progress has been made. But, like you said, the research keeps going. It seems like there's always something new happening.
It's true. Cancer research is always moving forward, always something new to discover.
Okay, so I have to ask, with all these, incredible advancements, what are you most curious about? What has you excited for the future of, all this cancer research?
Hmm. Well, there's a lot to be excited about, that's for sure. But one area that I find really fascinating is the potential of nanotechnology in cancer treatment.
Nanotechnology.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more.
So imagine like tiny robots, way smaller than a human cell, delivering drugs directly to the cancer cells, so we can avoid harming healthy tissue.
Well, hold on. That sounds like something out of, I don't know, a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? But it's becoming a reality. Scientists are already developing these nanoparticles. They can carry chemo drugs or other treatments right to the tumor. It's like super precise.
That's incredible. And I've heard about something called SAR-RT cell therapy, which also sounds pretty futuristic. What's that all about?
Oh yeah, Psi-RT cell therapy is a type of immunotherapy. It's pretty amazing. Basically, they take a patient's own immune cells and modify them genetically. So those cells become way better at killing cancer cells.
So it's like we're giving our immune system an upgrade.
Exactly. Personalized medicine at its best. So they take these T cells, which are, part of your immune system, and they give them this thing called a chimeric antigen receptor, or, CRR for short. And the CRR is designed to target proteins that are found specifically on cancer cells.
So it's like giving those T cells a homing device to find the cancer.
You got it. Then they put those modified T cells back into the patient, and they can just go hunt down those cancer cells and destroy them. It's super precise.
Wow, that's amazing. It seems like with cancer research, the line between science fiction and reality is getting really blurry.
It's true. We're making such amazing progress, and it's only getting faster, the pace of discovery.
So with all this progress, do you think we're getting close to a cure for cancer?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball or anything. But I can say this. What we've learned in the last few decades has been incredible. And honestly, we're kind of shifting away from the idea of a single cure for cancer. We're starting to understand that it's way more complex than that.
So it's not about finding one magic bullet, but more about having lots of different tools, right? Tools that we can use to treat each person's cancer in a way that's specific to them.
Exactly. And with every new discovery, we're adding more tools to that toolbox, giving us more options, more hope. Honestly, I think we're on the right track to make cancer more like a chronic condition, something you can manage, not a death sentence.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. And I have to say, this whole deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much. And you know what? I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future of cancer treatment and prevention.
Me too. And, it all goes back to the power of information. When we understand cancer better, we can do more to prevent it, catch it early, and fight it effectively.
That's so true. It's like we've peeled back all these layers and really gotten a better grasp on what cancer is, how it works, and what we can do, to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. And this is really just the beginning. There's always more to learn, always more to be hopeful about. So stay curious, keep learning.
Well said. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of cancer. We hope you've learned something new and that you're feeling empowered to take charge of your health. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay hopeful. Until next time.